Good morning. From my heart to yours, thank you for tuning in. Wherever you may be in the world, I'm here in Santa Monica, California, United States. Today is May 4th, 2021. I've resumed this series of talks based upon my newly released provocative book, Extinction X-Rated, an auto-fictional dark satire about good and evil. I'm very proud of it. I hope you will go to some online retailer and find it and enter it and go on a journey that may confound you, it may make you upset, it may release you, but it's meant as a type of existential, self-liberating therapy, catharsis, entertainment, a literary mandala. I'm going to talk more about it as days go on. But this is the 30th installment, and I'm going to keep going. Because I really find that the interaction with other, this Ubuntu of shared digital intimate space, this I cannot be who I am without you. In the crises that I'm in at the moment, I feel that this process every morning for me is a very healing, self-liberating way to further understand what I think by hearing myself express and grow from that interactive exchange with myself, with sub-selves, with my higher order wisdom. And I thank you from my heart, wherever you are. Many of you I have never met. I occasionally hear from you based upon text or messenger, the breathtaking comments over the weekend of my own personal sharing of my health challenge. From my heart to yours, thank you for tuning in. I love you. I'd love to dance with you, make love with you, do some DMT together, meditate together, enter the Nibbana field together, take rebirth and Tusita together to emerge in this new samsaric sangha, a concept that I'm playing with more intimately every day. For those of you out there, over the decades of my trajectory of human interaction with life and form, if I've upset you or hurt you or belittled you or judged you, from my heart to yours, from my ignorance, it's come, and leave it at that. Trans forgiveness. We are all embedded in this wicked, strange, cruel context. No doubt you've killed my mother, I've killed your father. The Buddha said in these texts, attributed to him at least, there's no one you have not met in this wild terrain called samsara who hasn't formerly been your lover, your brother, your enemy, your sister, your mother, your child, your cat. It's so crazy to think that we're all everyone all the time simultaneously, and yet different based on epidermal perceptions, context. Today's talk. Concentric circles of chemistry. Concentric levels of chemistry. And this poetic of coming home. I call the coming home process for me this deep, deeper than deep felt journey of awakening, but more specifically to what I consecrate as my dream summit, Nibbana, the absolute absence, the cessation of greed, anger, and delusion. Therein lies, in that belief system, in that process of evolutional wisdom, the contraband that I see around the world. Pause right now and just look. Look at our beloved Myanmar. Look at the people suffering unthinkable terror. I dare even have the patience and the compassion and the strength of heart to read the testimonies of those front-line journalists in hiding, documenting the evidence of tyranny and terror. And to think that we occupy the same plane as those people, yes, yes, yes. The Holocaust, the Third Reich, Vietnam, Syria, the boys and girls, 300,000 of them right at this very second, in Yemen, starving to death with American weapons used by the proxy evil of Saudi Arabia. Oil kingdom sheiks for the sake of the electrification of my life, your life. Wicked interrelatedness, context, concentric levels. Chemistry here isn't just a romantic chemistry. Toxic chemistries, addictive chemistries, evil chemistries. Chemistry here is that attraction that feels so natural. The bloodlust of boys and girls that are conscripted into ethnic cleansing. They just find a new identity, a new life, right? That kind of toxic chemistry of an ideology and an affinity, a raison d'etre that's just rooted in moha, as they say in Buddhism. Ignorance, blindness to reality, blindness to metta, blindness to compassion, blindness to karuna, compassion, the ability to feel. A friend of mine, I was talking to him yesterday, a beloved psychiatrist friend of mine, ally of the heart. He made a very brilliant comment, and I wrote it down. I said I would quote him, Krishnananda, Thomas Trobe. It takes wisdom to feel other. And so today, a journey, if you will, to come along on this weird moment of life. It's always weird, right? I was thinking of my beloved late teacher, the Sayadaw U Pandita, an ally of the heart, a rad, nonconformist traditional monk, juxtaposed with oddities and peculiarities, and a delight in liberation like I've never seen a candle bright like this, and in really imparting the skill set to aberrant Americans coming to a monastery in Burma without knowing the language or the culture, and being patient enough, kantified enough to navigate the complexities of this cultural exchange collision. Blessed am I to have learned these ancient teachings of Satipatthana. Sadhu, 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 sir. But I remember him telling me once, the Dhamma, this journey of awakening to greater degrees of liberation, the chemistry of the heart to find its highest nibbana in context in life. He said it's like coming home. He said, imagine being somewhat blind, but being able to see to some extent, and you're alone in a forest, and you feel this yearning. This is my own poetic, but he's more poetic than I. This yearning of the heart, this yearning of the body, this unexplainable metamorphic DNA in each of us, of the caterpillar that wants to rise to the branch and develop a cocoon and do butterfly. This yoginess, lifetime after lifetime, here we are together. Look at the journey that we're taking. And he would say it's like coming home, and you have to really learn to hear, to listen, and simultaneously navigate heightened complexities. It's not easy to be alone in the forest and understanding the way to travel through valleys and through rivers and through sleepless nights with insects, finding food and berries and fruits, to eventually follow that instinct for freedom, to quote a line by Noam Chomsky, that coming home process. And he would say, listen up. This is life and death. This is you wanting to make good on the promise of your reason to be a human, not just the comfort of a context of belongings and the avoidance of suffering, but coming home to something beyond those dualities, beyond those lokias of good and bad, right and wrong, love and hate. That's a very refined context. And he said, listen up. That's such a beautiful concept for me to meditate and do yoga by. Listen up, feel. Feel the unordinary rhythm of your own voice, nonconformist behaviors in alignment with Dhamma. I want you to go a mile or so up forward across the riverbed. There's a fork in the road or in the path. Make the left and walk a couple of miles over this little bit of a ridgeline and down again into the valley across another riverbed. And there's a fork of 3 different ways. Go right up the middle, young man. And then a little ways up further, you'll see a large tree. There'll be monkeys there. Don't be distracted by them. They'll want something from you, and you may want something from them. But go around that tree and follow it. And he went on and on like that. Then he paused. Now please reflect back to me, young monk, the way home. Did you listen up? Did you pay attention? How well did you mindfully interact with the information? It's not just being present along the journey of seeing and hearing and feeling and touching, in-breath, out-breath. You must recall, like you do the lyrics of a song that you love. You must recall the language of what you learned as a young child. You must bring back the past into the present, mindfulness, sati, the intimate capacity to recollect on wise behaviors that lead to the liberation of you coming home, young monk. Listen up. Learn through the navigation of the journey, and eventually, if you really listened up, you wouldn't have to return to find that old man way back when who gave you that solemn advice how to understand the deeper chemistries of not being waylaid by fear or greed or profit or privilege or terror or conformity, but coming home to your deepest true calling. That was Seda U Pandita. I've never met a human being on this planet before, during, or after. For me, yes, it was a love affair of the heart. Yes, was it complex? No. I loved it. Was it difficult? No. Yes, yes, no. Obviously, coming to terms with deep human intimacy through the filter of a Kalyanamitta, a true spiritual friend, someone who wants to cut collusion, cut complicity, right? What a gift that is to find a girl or a boy, a saint or a sinner, a combination of all, who's willing to talk to you through satya, truthfulness, for God's sake. Why is there such propaganda around truth? Why is living your truth so derelict for some people? Why is quality over longevity? Why is listening to the heartbeat so deeper than your own heartbeat that it's called the integrity of your integrity, the soul of conscience, right? Are you with me? Thanks for hanging. I feel it today, a little bit on Tuesday. I've been having a difficult night, hardly sleeping, but said I'm going to shake it off and live in the deepest fidelity today, my first day, my last day, in breath, right? There's no postponing anymore. Yes, be true to yourself, but listen deeply in the coming home process. That was the message I got in Burma. It wasn't a conformity to be a good Buddhist. It was to listen to the utter authenticity of your unique expression of wisdom coming up through the cellular nature of your own paramis, the deepest poetry of your liberation, right? These were the savants, these were the nuns, these were the monks. They said, please, young monk, you must come into the Mahasiyeta. We take you by your psychic hand and heart. We bathe you and anoint you with food and medicines and teachings and proximity. And I want you to do all that you can to observe yourself in all postures, all states of mind, at all times, standing, walking, reclining. I found an alignment. That's what I'm saying. I left the city of Los Angeles where I had a kind of jagged alignment, but I had to adapt through drugs and cocaine and morphine and sex and masturbation and money and travel and dance and music and radio, all the various things that delight and terrorize us, freeways and cars and crashes. But it was not really harmony. It was not really the fidelity of my deepest desire to feel a more resonant unity with my own authenticity, my own integrity. I wanted to really understand my DNA beyond being a caterpillar. I wanted to understand the DNA of my yogi. And I cried and I screamed and I threw my cocaine down and my pharmaceuticals and my morphine and my Dharma books, and I even burned my paintings and broke my brushes. You have to learn to scream along this journey, don't you? People want to contort you. You want to be contorted. You want to belong. You want to be accepted. You want applause. You want prestige. You want money. You want power. You want the continuity of wealth and status. And then there's those rare prophets deep buried in our hearts that cries out beyond the conformity to those natural impulses of propaganda within the lochia of samsara, the dance of duality, the propaganda, the indoctrination, the manufacturing of a puppet that's no longer you. And you see people that live for a month or 2 or 10, a decade or 3. The corporate cliche, I sold my existence unknowingly to become a corporate whore. No offense. And they break down, and there's the cliche of heart attacks and strokes and varicose veins and inabilities, divorce after divorce, become cyclical. And all of a sudden you are a regurgitated Californian that hated Donald Trump. No offense. But you're so predictable, dude. So predictable, girl. So over the top. But yet there are those rare yogis that listen to that deeper coming home process. Today it is not finished. I'm having to listen so carefully right now with the world in lockdown, closed down. Where do you belong, Alan Clements? Where do you really feel? I know you do the moment very well. You know, years back I was thinking, I had the good fortune of going on a book tour for one of my earliest books. It was a tragedy. It was Burma, the Next Killing Fields, 1991. It got a lot of publicity. It was one of the first books to really illuminate tragically some of the horrors in Burma. I had gone into the country illegally. I saw some of the violations of human rights that I've never witnessed. I've only read about or seen in movies. I went out to the Shan state, the Karen state. I met with leaders, politicians, guerrilla soldiers. I saw the most extraordinary horrors of what the military regime in Burma had been doing for decades, but they were doing it even then in 1990, and they're doing it even worse today in 2021. And I remember on this book tour just talking about these incredible atrocities. And I was doing my job, but it was really an unforgiving task. But I felt so aligned to the Dhamma family of my sacred Burma, a chemistry that I carried back in America. But being back in America, I felt so out of place. I remember meeting James Hillman, the Jungian therapist, after us both being on a particular radio show, actually here in Los Angeles. I think he was on tour for his book, one of his books. I think it may have been called, could have been 100 Years of Psychotherapy and Things Have Gotten Worse. And it was a book of conversations or letters back with a journalist here from the LA Weekly. And I remember having read that, and it was amazing to me. But one of the takeaways for me that was very fascinating was that he really saw through his own psychotherapeutic professionality that he would see clients doing his professional teaching in these offices here in the city. And over the weeks, over the months, over the years, he would keep seeing a client over and over and over again, doing the very best he could with her and him to adjust, to adapt, to understand the various symbols, the archetypes, the anima, the animus, the states of mind, navigating professionally with a professional. And they wouldn't really so-called come home to that place of autonomy and independence and individuation and engagement and vocation and in control more of their own faculties, their own mind, cranking and cracking the addictions to conformity and to false faces and holding up childhood narratives that no longer belong to the integrity of a more adult face and body. But you can't grab the puppeteer and just say, no, I want to stop being controlled by this false narrative from childhood. I want to give it up. I want to break the mold of that face. And you rip off that face on a DMT trip or an acid trip or an MDA trip or a therapy trip, he would say. This is my own poetics. And still they wouldn't heal. They wouldn't know how to come home. They go home and still fight and bang their head against the conditioning of their own strange denial. And then I would get these letters. They would move away, and all of a sudden I began to see some of them, when they moved to these outposts where there wasn't even a therapist, they would write back. It says, Mr. Hillman, I cannot believe how happy I am, how I feel like I've come home. And he began to see in this book, and he expresses it quite eloquently, better than I can here, he began to appreciate that consciousness is in a context, right? Not just an embodied body as a context, or just subselves and denial of selves and those concentric inner contexts and the chemistry of one or two, but context. We're in family constellations, blah, 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 blah. We're in societal constellations, blah, 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 blah. We're in urban constellations, not so blah, 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 blah. We're in job addiction, rehabilitation, terror camp addictions, not so blah, 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 blah. The machination of our lives, even though we do yoga, we're still unnimble to the conditioning of conformity, despite doing asana with such skill. We're at the front of the room with 120 people pre or post pandemic, and they're adoring our ability to be as nimble as a monkey. And we go home and we walk and we talk and we drive and we make love in a contortion. And he began to see that context made a huge difference. I don't know about you, but when I left Los Angeles, I left America back in the 70s, and despite the struggle of a monastery, that shift of context from one kind of chemistry to another chemistry, the chemistry of the context of the sacred in that monastery at that time in 1979, for a brief period of time, I did nothing except move. I changed my clothes from ordinary attire. I shaved my head. I took off leather shoes and wore sandals. I stopped ordering food at restaurants and was simply on alms round in villages. I stopped waking up and smoking a cigarette and reading the New York Times. I consciously empowered and experimented with my sacred inner celibate. Quite frankly, that was a remarkable sense of vitality and joy. I'd never known how beautiful it was to make love. Boy, Alan, this is as cliched as it gets. To make love with my own simplicity. Not with my own mind, with my own simplicity. I went, God, this is a bigger turn on than the eroticism of even what I had in my life in America. The fantasy of that eroticism faded so fast to the contextual shift of just simply nekama, the natural coming home process to just basic human nakedness. I was no longer compelled by the cigarette, although I smoked cigars for the first 3 or 4 months, to transition from the horrors of the pharmaceutical addictions that I carried with me in my mind and my blood. And I had the grace and the convenience and the skill to navigate butts of opium-laced cheroots in Burma, and eventually they fell away. Masturbation stopped. Sexual fantasies stopped. I heard music from my childhood, from my teenage years, from my adult life, gradually enticing me from those historical contexts, shedding like old, worn-out sonic hymns. And then there became, and I know it's so easy to say, Alan, the songs and the hymns of silence. But those of you who are yogis and meditators know there is something so symphonic, so rad, so hip-hop about the heartbeat of phenomenology in relationship to the mindfulness to see the tilakkhana of anicca, anatta, and dukkha. I mean, I had never heard or felt the music of insight like this based upon simply relaxing and being more intimately aware of the phenomenology of consciousness as it arises in the moment. That context stays with me today, nearly 45 years later. And that context has always evolved, just like Sayadaw U Pandita talked to me. Alan, young monk, coming home, listen up. I'm going through that forest, traveling the world 50 times on planes and ox carts and trishaws and bicycles and walking in cities and countries and meditating and retreats. And yet it's always been through that interior contextual global context, the forest of coming home across the riverbank, make a left over the ridge, down into the valley. How well do you recall the navigational skills of insight, of Satipatthana? How well do you understand the language of transformation? U Pandita would so emphasize, how well do you recall the language of transformational wisdom, Dhamma? Embedded in your heart and mind. Let it be the context that you live through. Let it define your heart, your soul, your mind, your mindfulness. Let it be that you can have blindness through your physical eyes, but your mind is wide and alert, and your mindfulness is eyes wide open through the study and the felt reality of Dhamma. All of it's a journey of coming home, he would say, to Nibbana, the unconditioned release from greed, anger, and delusion. Thank you, Sayadaw U Pandita. Thank you, Mr. Hillman. The last third, just riffing spontaneously. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being in my life. Thank you for your beautiful comments. I wish I knew today the certainty that I had this weekend of where I'm going, what I'm doing. I'm a little bit not in doubt, but I'm a little bit in contemplation. I was received notice yesterday from the surgeon here at UCLA Medical that I will be granted this thing called an angiogram to discover the health of my arteries, to determine if there'll be a need for bypass along with the other surgeries, if I need to get that or if I choose to get that. So I'm both excited that I go into this day-long procedure that's quite invasive, they say, but doable, to determine these arterial health or blockages, to finally come to a decision on immediacy of surgery, to unblock or to fix this ascending, acutely enlarged aorta aneurysm. Dun, 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 heartbeat, heartbeat. No stress, Alan, no stress. Only make love in the most simple, beautiful way. Or just simply move forward into the forest of freedom and walk and undress on the mountainsides somewhere. It's always that coming home. I'm asking myself today, where is that home? I don't know about you, but I've been in a suitcase for the last 5 years and the last 50 years. I left here in 1976 with a backpack that was lost on flight. 50 years of mindfulness, and the world has gotten worse at the precipice of the sixth mass extinction. Do not place your worth where dust and rust and disease doth corrupt, to expand upon a quote attributed to our beloved Jesus. Growing up in a family, becoming a carpenter, I often imagine, he just let his hair grow long, took off his sandals, gave up his career. He didn't go to the California Institute of Integral Studies to get a PhD in plant therapy. He just dropped the narrative of the conditioning, as I understand it through the metaphor of coming home, and lived into the heart of the miraculous, the healing, the love, the ascension, and the karma of a crucifixion, the betrayals, right? I think of Devadatta within the Buddhist tradition, this arch enemy that the Buddha attributed to in his long journey of awakening. I could not be who I am as a Buddha without Devadatta, my arch nemesis, helping me to understand through my own dedication to coming home to the evolution of the paramis, the 10 radiant Deva-like qualities of consciousness, that when fully mature, it said, one becomes awakened as a Buddha. He tried to kill me numerous times in our last lifetime, my last lifetime. Think of that. Think of that context, how unpoetic it is to encounter the ugly, the terrorists, the Ming online in Burma, the persecution of how many people that we know as brothers and sisters in Burma or around the world where there are political prisoners right at this very second being tortured. What they've suffered in the gulags. Look at the girls in Burma right now being raped by these military goons, these satanic evil men. These contexts that we're born into. It's so poetic, Alan, to come home. You've got a choice right now for a month or 2 or 3, maybe 10, who knows. I want to live on Maui. I want to be on Bali. I want to commune. I want to tantrify. I want to beautify. And yet the context, the jungle of samsara is right here in my own mind and body and there. You open the compassion door, the empathy door. As my friend Krishna said, it takes wisdom, and I would say it takes radical guts and deep ethical courage to feel other. My journey of coming home isn't just about Alan finding the context to so-called heal. Healing through intimacy, healing through the tantrification of dealing with complexity, healing through compassion, healing through love. Love, what am I craving? People are asking, what does your heart really want? Drugs. I want to be in the moment, okay? The tyranny, the sadism of being in the moment. What a bad joke that is. Way too short. I want to make love with the eternal goddess, the divine feminine in the mind of a Buddha. I want to meet my samsaric sangha. I know who they are in this lifetime. I think. But if I divinely relax the agendas of right and wrong, in meeting these people in a new evolutional intimacy? Yes, Alan, that's what I want. Come to me wherever I am. The hardest thing in the world for me, if you really want to know a very deep secret, is to ask for anything. I do not feel comfortable asking. Yes, I could attribute it to my dad. He said, Alan, if you want what you want in this life, you've got to do it. You've got to do it despite the odds. One of my best friends who bequeathed this home to me temporarily, and his wife Jenny, whom I married, Bob Chardoff, the great producer of 39 films, also the films on Rocky. Never give up. You got to do it for yourself. Rags to riches. Everyone deserves a second chance and a third chance. Everyone's got their Devadatta outside and inside that wants to tyrannize you. We've all got Mara inside and outside, wanting to seduce us, terrorize us, anoint us in the elixir of a poison that tastes so sweet, right? Having to navigate the forest of coming home through these various outrageous phantasms and pseudo forms of psychedelic and cultisms and beliefs and phantasms and joys and all those bastards and bitches out there that want to take you down. They want to vilify you. They want to put you in your place because you're conceited, you're arrogant, you're unhinged. You don't belong to the cult of the spiritually Buddhist, psychologically correct. Brash, trailer rat, whatever it is that you want to do to tyrannize someone, because why? Because you can't feel, you can't be intimate, you can't be naked. Shifting context, that's what I want to do right now. I've been in this not lockdown. I'm not a victim of a lockdown any more than I was a victim of being a monk. The expanse of mindfulness within the context of voluntary renunciation, that's a different form of engagement with so-called less freedoms to fly and tyrannize the future of life through fossilization and electrification. And I need to go, I need to travel, at the context of the future of life. So where do I want to go right now? I want to ask you, help me, to help you, to shift context, just like James Hillman did, and he learned shifting context. Where is that context? Well, I have a chance to shift the context. Just a really intense pain at the moment. Maybe I'm just overworking and becoming, in my rant and passion, maybe it's just too much blood, but so be it. Let me then conclude. I remember years back when I came back to America after being told to leave Burma for the third or fourth time by the beloved Devadatta Ne Win, the dictator in Burma, the grandfather of the present day satanic cult leader in Burma known as Ming Online, and his terrorist group called MASAC, the State Administration Council, the latest designated terrorist group on planet Earth. He wins the opposite of the Nobel Peace Prize. He wins the International Evil Prize for the most satanic behavior that conscripts other boys and girls and men and women into satanic behaviors. Welcome, Ming Online, to the designated Devadatta Award of the Globe. We're all going to learn metta through you. All of us are going to learn compassion through you. And we're also going to learn how to navigate skillfully by taking you out of our own mind, not going to vilify you, and take you to the criminal court so you can learn the Dhamma. And there you may rest in peace in your own Mahasi Tatana Yekta behind bars, and your wife can send you little blueprints of love from a distant gulag in China where she and your family have gone to reside in the bliss of a genocidal country with 1.4 billion beautiful Chinese persecuted by the genocidal nuclear-armed Xi Jinping. But Ming Online, you now have won Devadatta Award. And you will find yourself in the criminal court, because even if you don't go to The Hague, you're already in The Hague. And because of that lack of conscience, you got to do a parami dance at one point. You're going to have to see Mr. Hillman. You're going to have to meditate with Mahasi Sayadaw on some plane of existence. You're going to have to do plant medicine one day and come to terms with your denial of love. And so when I came back from Burma to the West, it was like, uh-oh, this is worse than leaving California pre-monastic life, being addicted to pharmaceuticals, to cocaine. I mean, I don't use addiction as a negative, by the way. Those of you who know me, addiction isn't part of my vocabulary, but I use it frequently because I'm a little bit lazy. I need to find better words. Compulsive engagement in momentary joy, bliss desires that are normally called addictions. But I would do them so mindfully, it was amazing to me that I actually found mindful joy in sipping the wine, and sipping sex, in sipping masturbatory fantasies, and sipping cocaine, and sipping pharmaceuticals, and sipping sleeping pills. I took the evil out of those things to the point where I normalized them. My denial was either so thick that I had kind of found a bluff on that metaphorical coming home process and kind of fell over the cliff and didn't realize I was falling, and went into my astronautical metaphor and felt zero gravity in the face of these addictions. Is it really possible to do everything with freedom? Some things fall away, some things come closer. The risk of authenticity. I came back to the West and I was quite shocked. You might call it culture shock, but it comes back to James Hillman's thing. I'm in the psychotherapeutic lounge of existential Burma in a monastery with savants, where I'm practicing the existential sapio transsexual dance with nuns and monks, and finding this electric intimacy and sensitivity of mindful presence cohabitating shared states of consciousness. I haven't even really gone down the road of heightened states of consciousness. Craving more and more intimate access to those higher lokias, those higher dhammas, those higher degrees of seclusion from kilesa, temporary as it is, and higher access to elevated states of the Sobhana Chaitasikas, the beautiful states of mind, shifting context inside, right? That's what the LSD, the DMT, the ayahuasca, it often allows very quickly and momentarily shifts of concentric context inside if you've got the right guide, girl, goddess, therapist in your presence at the time, or the navigational prophet inside, or both in the right setting, and all of a sudden, oh my God, just with a little bit of this on the tongue or up the nose or in the mind, and you go, oh my God, I'm not who I was 20 minutes ago. I am not who I was an hour ago. And now you're in this rarefied field of heightened states of consciousness. What difference the addicted psychedelic prophet to the yogi is encouraged to understand intelligently how you got there organically, how to stay there, how to evolve insight into the unique characteristic. What is the unique characteristic, young monk? I heard this all the time, of calm. Talk to me about calm. What is the unique characteristic of khanti, patience? Talk to me, young monk, about what you discern as the characteristic, the felt reality of khanti. Talk to me about what you see both with your mindfulness and the quality of mindfulness. And then these more radiant states. So I'm in the West, and I'm meeting people that I once knew, and boy, are they busy. No offense. How great it is to see you, and then within a couple of minutes, your 3.5, 4 years abroad is like gone in a couple of sentences, and well, I've got to be on my way. The speed. It's one of the things I notice out here is the denial of intimacy, the pretense of intimacy, and the denial of speed, which is cloaked under urbanization, electrification, fossil fuel addiction, all the various needs for manufacturing, like arteries within society, and you live this little kind of protected, highly expensive to self and tribe and ghost slaves, as it's been determined by all those people that we don't know in all those other third, fourth, and fifth world countries that slave like livestock to support the lives of the rich and famous, even if you're a middle-class person in the Western world. Cars, gas, plastics, foods. I mean, I'm going to get some organic butter flown in from New Zealand. It should cost like $375 for a slice that you go, God, that's just too much. I better get the butter that comes from, Idaho. Damn it, not nearly as good as New Zealand. And it's just, all the kids that are yet born, all the insects and the birds are going like, hey, you hypocrite at Whole Foods on Montana, goddamn, give up butter. I want to be born one day by your denial. Context, coming home. And so, the speed issue, the infatuation with the phenomena of status, wealth, privilege. No offense, LA, no offense, Santa Monica, no offense, Venice, no offense, Globe, but, and I'd probably even get Botox if I could afford it, especially on my ego, to bolster it out a little bit more so I could ask for things that I really want. But when I venture down to the promenade here, the amount of artificial expanding things in people's body, they're working out with weights, and so many of them are injected with flat fleshing substances. It's like even girls and boys in their 25, you cannot believe, what is this fixation on tight? It's like, it's not even, is it like too much Barbieing in the bloodstream where you just got to be tight? And no offense to breasts, but why do they have to be, and the butt, the Kardashian butt. And it's like, where am I, Alan? I left here 50 years ago. It was insane. There's something about, are you just like getting old, dude? Get with the program. Why aren't your lips just... And they're all doing yoga. They're meditating on the beach here. And all of them are doing handstands and kickbacks. And everything they wear, by and large, including what you wear, Mr. Clements, is made by slave laborers in third and fourth world countries, made by microplastics that are in the water, they're in the air, they're in the lungs, they're in the fish. And guess what? We're going to suffocate from the cult of attire so that people can do asana and meditate because of microplastics. Just that alone. Set aside the electrification and the fossil fuels dedicated to make it all look pretty. I just am staggered by what I think and feel today of trying to navigate Seda U Pandita's analogy of coming home. I almost pity the youth in trying to navigate how to come home, how to believe in yourself, how to hear your truth. I know I sound like an old person, but I'm not. The older I get, the younger I feel, the more dynamic, the more liberated, the more authentic. My life now is more and more a gift. I don't want to exaggerate this gift. I have not yet really determined my so-called medical condition. I'm looking carefully at the landscape, but I do want to pause. I think I want to take a couple of months to sanctify and elevate and to feel, to make love again, to touch, to be touched, to dance, to create poetry, to hear from other people. What do you think and do you feel? I want to feel flowers. I want to grow. I want to feel a fruit. I want to taste a mango. I want to pick it from a tree. I don't want to buy it at Whole Foods. I want to walk on a beach. I want to sit down. I don't like swimming. I want to just hang in the water that's clear. I don't want to be bitten by a shark, but that's always a possibility, whether it's human or vulture or animal or reptile or oceanic. I don't want to give up on my love of Burma. It's too stressful. It's too stressful. I can't wait to hear more about what it was like to be a monk, Alan. How about we connect for coffee somewhere like in downtown Mill Valley? Look in my address book. This is all pre, of course, social media, pre-phones, and those day planners that everyone had that was sort of like, hey man, how about, I got an opening, how about 2 weeks from now, 3 o'clock on Thursday, you free? I just came from a monastery, no offense, where we were encouraged, not only encouraged, but you take the clock off your wrist, right? You take the clock off your mind. The whole thing about the Nibbana metaphor is timelessness, trans-dimensionality. I love the concept of the deathless. The Buddha was asked, supposedly, what is the way to understand this Nibbana, this unconditional phenomenology of deep seclusion in the moment from kilesa and the possibility of a deeper seclusion from the substratum of these kilesa. And that's so, isn't that a mind-boggling, beautiful concept? Seclusion from the substrata, the deep substratum, the primordial greed, anger, and delusion, gone, vanquished. I love it. Just love it. And how to be in these dynamics. Let me conclude. There's so many missing finalities to these intersecting stories. The Bali story, the Burma story, the monastic story, the James Hillman story. Coming home. Where do I really want to be? I am where I am, who I am, where I am. I want to authenticate, elevate, and become more intimate with more holistic, flesh-embodied, equally not in denial of ascension, transcendent states of inner and outer beingness with self and other. I want to commune in the bodhisattvic to self. I want to turn my inner Devadatta into an art form of elevated metta. I want to move through the artifice of the world, and give back as much as I humanly can. Thank you, my dear beloved Krishnananda, Mr. Thomas Trobe. It takes wisdom, Alan, to consider other. It takes courage to be intimate with other. Thank you, Seda U Pandita, for having the courage and the patience and the wisdom to navigate my own rebel complexity, my lower middle class maverick. My dad, I bless you, and I thank you, Mom, for teaching me the radical independence that if you want to have what you want, you work, son. And from 11 years old, I worked. Every Sunday at 3 a.m. I would get up to work in a gas station, pumping gasoline and changing oil and fixing tires, and to come back and go to school early in the morning and put my head down on my desk and fall asleep from being exhausted. But I had $10 that I earned from my own sweat and toil, and my dad helped me to do that. And I learned how to make and rebuild and enhance cars that I would buy before I even got a car license and sell them. I had more money than even anyone in my school that was my age. I bought great shoes and clothing, and I learned what it meant to be more and more independent, and I wasn't even that attached to it. And right now, to do something that's transactional is just so dead in the water. It'd be amazing at the UCLA Medical Hospital where I've been going that the doctors did what they did on Donna. Pay forward. You know, after your surgery for your heart transplant or your repair of your aorta, you leave what you can for the next patient. Is there a possibility of an earth, a future, a life where pay forward, dana, generosity, that's one of the most breathtaking qualities in a human experience that I can see. The words are so okay, but they're just not poetic, no matter how poetic they are, right? Showing up is like, in silence you give without asking what you need. Do what you can to put healing hands on the heart of your own heart and offer them freely. If it requires touch, seek permission to touch in the tantric intimacy of shared space. Is there such a concept, I'm asking myself, as true healing? It's a temporary thing tempered by mortality. You can never outpace the body and biology and the programming of this biology encased in this samsara, the cyclic interrelatedness of endless papanchas, conceptualizations that proliferate greed, anger, and delusion. I want no part of that forest. Come home, young monk, come home to that higher chemistry that you know that's calling you home. I hear Seda U Pandita, I hear Mahasi Sayadaw. I even hear Aung San Suu Kyi encased in her prison right now, but liberated in her conscience. The fidelity of her Dharma, the fidelity of Dhamma, the beauty of Buddha Dhamma Sangha. May the Aritant, my determination to come into a field of grace in my coming weeks and months, may it manifest, may it come forth, a home, a sanctuary, cottages, friends, family, lovers, whomever wants to commune and consecrate, transform our inner and outer Devadatas, to have the wisdom, as my friend expressed, to feel other, to heal, to elevate, and to go home where old age and disease and famine cannot touch us. The combination of the embodied bliss, the embodied struggles of complexity, and never giving up on the ascension to the ever-present seclusion from kilesa, the nibbana now, the nibbana tomorrow, and ultimately I would like to think of the nibbana that radiates all places, everywhere, simultaneously, that is the guiding transparency of unconditional freedom throughout this horrible, cruel tapestry of genocide, asteroids, environmental collapses, apocalypses, ethnic cleansings, rapes, extinctions. Who are we? Where are we? Other than these nuministic flakes forming and reforming, coming home. I want to go home. I want to say I want to enjoy the journey. But I don't know how else to do it other than to play and to create sacred dances and poems and riddles and puzzles that you undo from your own heart, the conditioning of your conformity. I would like to live and breathe and die in the absolute absence of belonging to the cult of the lie, of conformity, of delusion. I don't want to be conscripted by the devil. I want to fall in love with the divine feminine, the freedom intrinsic in here and now, and hopefully through ardent, intimate, simple, present time, mindful presence, that I can carry the monastic from Burma into my life, into my heart, into my relationships. And my aditant is to create in the next few months this oasis of transformational awakening. At the end of that, if I don't get surgery, to get another CT scan and to see the size of this aorta, is it grown? And if I were to pass, I will pass knowing that I followed my teacher's advice. Young monk, listen, overcome the concentric circles of conformity, and come home. Listen to your heart. Listen to your Dhamma voice, and achieve in this life or your next the highest experience of Nibbana. So may the truth of what I've shared today be the power to deliver exactly what I'm desiring for the betterment of my life and the betterment of all life in all dimensions throughout this samsara. So thank you for being a part of this sharing today. Thank you from my heart, and I hope to see you tomorrow at 9:30. I hope you have a beautiful day. Thank you.